Hello, my name is Kirioth, and today we're going to talk about this Warhammer Cafe, what Games Workshop have announced. So, there's going to be, in North America, a Warhammer Cafe, the first of its kind, and there will be all kinds of funky stuff going on. Gaming tables, enough space to run special events and activities, food, drink. They're going to have things like the design studio, guest and design studio in there, unique displays. It kind of sounds like an okay idea. It sounds like it could work. But there seems to be a very mixed reaction to it. There seems to be a kind of thing where there are doubts as to whether this could be an effective way for Games Workshop to get people together. And I have to admit, the first time I read anything about this, I did think to myself, this already feels dated. It feels like something that is about 10 years behind everything else. It may just be my personal experience, of course, but I don't really see things like themed cafes or anything. Not around here anyway, at least I haven't come across any in this country so much. Even in some of the larger cities, I just have never really seen these things outside of things like gaming bars, which even then are relatively rare in and of themselves. So the idea of a Warhammer Cafe where there is food and drink and stuff for you to buy, and you can go and paint and you can play the game, first glance, it kind of seems a bit off. It seems a bit old in a way. But I think one of the things that I certainly did when I first read it was to completely ignore a fairly important, in fact, I think almost completely inescapable fact about Warhammer, which is that it's never really made the move to anything outside of the physical hobby. In terms of actually playing Warhammer 40,000, I'm not talking about adaptations, I'm not talking about things like video games, because yes, you could argue, well, you say that you can't play the tabletop game online, but what about things like Dawn of War? They're good games, but apart from the third one, but they're not the tabletop game. You can play Space Marine, but it's not the tabletop game. You cannot collect and craft an army online and then fight other people's armies online. That's not really something that is openly available. There are ways of doing it, yes, but is it as actually popular as people playing the game in person, as people collecting the models, assembling them, painting them? I don't think it is. It's not mentioned anywhere near as often as the actual physical game. Anyway, I think it's Tabletop Simulator, there is a way to do it, but it's not quite on the same level. It's not like D&D, for instance, which has got a ridiculous online presence now in the forms of things like Roll20. There's entire Discord servers that are just dedicated to finding other people to play the game with. Obviously, it's a lot easier with things like pen and paper RPGs to do them online. But for Warhammer 40k, nothing is really going to have that same feel. You're not going to replicate that experience of having an actual physical match with someone outside of actually having a physical match with someone. And I think that's the key to understanding why Games Workshop would open a Warhammer Cafe, a concept that on the surface of it seems a little bit dated. There is that social aspect to 40k that is almost completely unavoidable if you actually want to play the game. You cannot really sit down and just play yourself. Well, I suppose it's possible, but I don't really know anyone who does. If you want to have the proper 40k experience, you've got to meet up with people. You've got to lug your models around, or host it at your house if you want to get around that bit. And you've got to engage in that face-to-face activity. In the context of that, actually, provided they do it well, provided they are sensible with how they operate it, a Warhammer Cafe could be incredibly popular. If you've got the space, if you've got the facilities to do things like regular painting competitions, regular, I wouldn't even say tournaments, but almost, well, yeah, tournaments, but like smaller, like more focused tournaments. If you've got the staff as well who are prepared to put in the time, you could actually turn something like the Warhammer Cafe into a properly thriving, actual social scene. It's very easy to drop in and out of things. It's very easy to get it so that someone goes in once, they maybe have a game, they maybe paint something, and then they don't come back. If they can find a reason to get people coming back, if they can find a reason to not just get veterans of the hobby interested in that one particular aspect of whatever it is they do in that space, they can also get new people to do the same thing. They can turn new people into veterans by offering incentives for them to come into this place. Like they've talked about the design studio. Having people actually come in and talk about the hobby from a position of authority, you could apply to any number of different kind of, circles within 40k. Because, whilst 40k is quite a big hobby, there are definite kind of groups within it. There's the people who only do competitive stuff. There are the tournament players who they focus in on one part of the hobby, which is creating competitive lists and then winning tournaments with them. You've got the people who just prefer to collect. You've got people who like to kit bash maybe, but don't like to paint. You've got people who love to paint but don't really play the game. You've got people who do all of that stuff. There's a lot of kind of individual groups. If they can find a way, if they can find different ways and the right amount of time, and time is going to be the biggest constraint on trying to attract all of these people, if they can balance those things and get each group involved in something like a Warhammer Cafe where they can go in at like 10 a.m. and find that they haven't left until 5 because there's food there, there's drink there, there's people there to have a game with, there's people who are there painting. Oh, if you happen to come in on this Saturday, you'll be able to hear this Black Library author talk about whatever. If you go in on this particular Friday, then you'll be able to hear one of the design team talk about this particular codex and why they were doing this, that, and the other. It has the potential to actually be a really good idea. Now, the key is to make it, I think, a actual interesting space. To actually make it so that it's not just a store with food and drink. Because if it's just a store with food and drink, I think they'll find very rapidly that the extra investment in increased space, that the extra investment in the facilities that allow them to sell things like food and drink may not have been worth it. If it's just treated as, oh, it's a larger shop, but you can have your lunch there, that is not a bad idea, but it's not living up to the potential of the idea as to what it could be. I mean, you can go into any Games Workshop store, pretty much, and at some point you'll be able to get a game, at some point you might be able to paint something, but you need something extra special to make the larger space and the larger requirements worthwhile. Now, what I'm actually hoping is that it does turn out to be a success. I'm hoping that they do get a good balance of different aspects of the hobby right. I'm hoping that they do find a way to draw in every sort of level of hobbyist within 40k and Age of Sigmar, obviously. I mean, we're taking a 40k slant on it because this is a 40k channel, but there's also an entire other game system within Games Workshop that has huge potential for getting people in. It's the same thing with the box games as well. Like, there's no better way to introduce people to things like box games than to actually have them play it, I think. That seems to be the best way that I've come across anyway. If you can actually sit someone down and say, this is Shadespire, and then teach them how to play it right there and then, that is a great way to get them involved. You do the same thing with Necromunda. You could do the same thing with Kill Team. Yeah, Kill Team. There's all kinds of stuff that they could actually do to make it worth it. The thing is, what if they don't? That's the worrying bit for me. I went from, when I looked at this stuff, I went from that feels dated to that could work to, oh, this could actually be a really, really good idea. This could really be something that is very effective at bringing people in the hobby together, actually providing not a static social situation, but somewhere where people know what they're going to get when they go there. The actual worry now for me is, what if they mess it up? Because something like this has such an immense amount of potential that if you mess it up, you can really mess it up. The ideal news would be that the Warhammer Cafe in North America, the north of America, I mean, bloody Game of Thrones, is it? In North America, is such a success that they are opening several more. Not just in America, but elsewhere as well. And then maybe the news that 1 in 10 Games Workshop stores is now being upgraded to a Warhammer Cafe. They're actually expanding them out, that it's such a good idea and it's been done so well, and that they can scale it appropriately, that we see them more often. What I don't want to see is 6 months down the line, it's just a large Warhammer store and it's not making enough to keep itself running. It's a failed experiment, because it doesn't need to be. If they play it right and do a decent job with it, it could actually be something whereby there is a easily identifiable, welcoming place where you can literally spend the day just doing whatever you want with the hobby, and you can just be there. You know, you can actually have that space where there's no reason to go somewhere else. You could just sit there and have an entire day of 40k, meeting new people, playing new people, helping other people with, you know, starting out with painting, whatever they want to do. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a really good idea. But the execution is everything, and I really don't want them to get it wrong. Because, as I say, I think it could actually have great potential, and it could do a lot to get new people into the hobby. Into all of the hobbies. Into Age of Sigmar, into 40k, into Necromunda, into Blood Bowl, you name it. It's a great gateway. But they've got to get it right. Question is, what do you think? Do you think it's a good idea? Bad idea? Do you think they'll get it right, or do you think that they might make some missteps? Actually, no, that's not fair. I think there is a good chance that any company makes missteps when they try something for the first time, but do you have confidence that they'll be able to overcome those missteps and actually make it not just worth doing, but have it so it lives up to its potential? I'd be really interested to hear what you think, because there's been quite a few different opinions on this, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of general consensus at the moment, outside of, we'll have to see what happens. So let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, feel free to click any of these links over the screen. There's videos, Patreon, subscribe, all of that crap. Click it if you like, don't click if you don't want to. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.